Everyone, and welcome here to Neville Hall in this wonderful lecture theatre yet again for the first lecture in the coming series. Welcome to you all. Just a few little notes first of all. There obviously are fire signs around the place. In the event of anything happens, just make your way to and follow the signs through to the exits. And I believe the congregation point is somewhere just outside the station, but that isn't going to happen. So let's carry on. The next thing is, of course, can you switch off your mobile phones, which I'm going to do at the same time, because we still implement a £50 fine for anyone whose phone rings as it's happening. Well, it's definitely inflation. So without any more ado, good evening again, Andrew.
Hello.
So do you have any apologies for absence? I have Norman Jackson, Stefan Thatcher, and Ian Cameron McIntosh. Do you have any additionals?
No.
No? Wow. There's a strange thing. Well, let's move on quickly then. So over to you, Andrew, for the minutes of the last meeting.
Lovely. So, of course, everyone at the Institute very much hopes that everyone watching has had a lovely and restful summer. Our last lecture was held on the 16th of June, which was the last of our 21-22 series, and that was jointly with the Royal Institution of Naval Architects, Institute of Marine Engineering, Science and Technology, and the Nautical Institute. So many thanks for the North East Coast Joint Branch for all their hard work working with us to put that together. And many thanks again to Keith Hutchinson. If you enjoyed that talk, he's back in May, so do look out for updates on that. It was an excellent attendance. Actually, I think we've got more turned up numbers there, and a large range of very interesting questions. Can we take that as a record of minutes? Then, of course, moving on. Well, this is our October Institute lecture, as our president has said. This is the start of our new lecture series for 22 to 23, and we've got plenty more coming. So here are the dates of all of the lecture program, and what we have is our AGM is now in November, so we very much look forward to seeing you all there as well. Just some dates coming up for the next few lectures. We're overjoyed for the 5th year running to have a joint lecture with the Geological Society of London. This year it's going to be on the story of how the giant millipede of Northumberland was both lived, died, and then was rediscovered. And that's with Professor Neil Davies from the University of Cambridge, who'll be joining us for that one. Moving on to December, we're also having a joint lecture with the Institute of Corrosion, which is our first one with them, and it's going to be on interesting coatings for fire suppression systems, which of course have a range of uses everywhere from oil platforms to, of course, underground. So we look forward to seeing them there. We're also going to tease a special Christmas social for you all as well, so it's well worth the effort turning up to that one. We're also delighted that the first inaugural lecture of our Institute's International Mining Lecture Series will be held towards the end of November, and this will be held jointly with the Central Mining Institute in Poland, or Główny Instytut Górnictwa in Katowice, and it's going to give the results of a range of projects which have been working on not only how you're going to remediate former coal mines, but also what you can use them for, whether that's geothermal heat or further reprocessing of the tailings. So we're very lucky to have the director of the Institute, Professor Stanisław Kroszek, joining us, along with Professor Alicia Skrzeszlin. Don't forget, all of our lectures are online. We're currently updating everything as we speak, and it should all be updated by the end of this lecture tonight. So if you want to get all of our updates, do follow us via the social channels. We've got an ever-increasing range of lectures available via our superb YouTube channel, so don't forget to subscribe to that. We've got, again, as I was saying, a large range of events and activities coming up. Our lecture program is a bumper one this year. We've actually got, and in a few weeks' time, we've got our 170th anniversary dinner as well, which will be held there at Neville Hall. We've, of course, got our bi-monthly socials are back, and we're looking forward to doing some field trips. And that was the one there with the chap who discovered the millipede as well. So we're just putting the final touches before we release it into the wild. Don't forget, you can support us through membership. Just join today at mininstitute.org.uk/membership, and you can get a range of excellent membership benefits and more to come. So do keep an eye on there, as well as for our updated events program as well. So I'll hand back to you, Steve. It sounds like this is going to be an excellent lecture indeed, and it's fantastic to have representatives from Hetton 200 here as well tonight. So.
Thank you very much indeed, Andrew. Yes, you are quite correct there. We're very welcome, a lot of the Hetton 200 people here. And it's promises, of course, they know as well that it's going to be an absolutely wonderful lecture this evening. So I'll just go ahead and give a little bit of a talk to begin with for those who don't know you, John. And John Cook is Vice Chair of the Hetton Colliery Railway 200 Group. He joined Durham County Council in 1970, later becoming an electrical design engineer. He carried out the design of electrical installations for most types of Durham County Council buildings, and eventually became part of the energy management unit, which helped save millions of pounds in energy costs. He was a member of Durham County Council Environmental Awards Scheme and finally retired in 2010. Unbelievable. He enjoys railway modelling and has an exhibition layout called Keep Colliery, based loosely on the Hetton Colliery Railway, which has been displayed around the country, including here at Neville Hall itself. As a child, the Hetton Lions Colliery and its railway was a playground, because there was no health and safety things in those days. I did that too, so I can admit it as well. And he fostered a lifelong interest in industrial railways. John's always been interested in railway history in this and other areas of County Durham and Northumberland. And John, along with like-minded colleagues, feel that the Hetton Colliery Railway must have more recognition, and I couldn't say anything more heartfelt myself. I think it definitely needs more recognition. It's a very, very important part of the North East and world history. So he's a major contributor to the birth, well, it is a major contributor to the birth of early railways. This talk will show the build-up of the area and the collieries, and take a tour of the railway from Elemore Colliery to Sunderland Staiths. So I don't need to say any more, because you're going to get some really interesting words from John. So may I introduce you to John Cook, please?
Did I write that? Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. We got together as a group in 2018 to celebrate the 200th anniversary of the Hetton Colliery Railway and the colliery, because it's not publicised very well, and people just don't realise how important it was in the birth of early railways and of collieries. As I'll show you later, that the sinking of Hetton Lions opened up the whole of the East Coast mining area. This is just our advert for the railway. The basic important thing is the bottom line, which we felt that the opening of the Hetton Colliery Railway in 1822 was a major contributor to the birth of early railways in this country and indeed the world. Right. If you don't mind our ceremony, I don't like twisting my neck. Right, the bicentenary of the Hetton Colliery Railway, 1822-2022. The photograph of the Hetton engine, which is in the National Collection, I'll discuss that later. Okay. Basically, before Hetton was sunk, the whole area was agricultural. There was about, in the 1800s, there was about 230 people lived there. By the opening of the collieries in the area, by 1831, there was nearly 6,000 people lived in the area. This is, find it. That's the area as it was. All of the land shown on there was owned by the Lion family. which eventually became the Bowes Line, and of course the Queen Mother, her family, her forebears. John Lyon had tried to sink a colliery in the late 1700s, early 1800s, and failed because of the problems with the limestone. So as you can see, just an agricultural area. When the collieries came, the whole place just changed totally. Okay. The joint stock company was set up by Arthur Mowbray to develop the colliery, and as I said earlier, a lot of geologists thought that the coal under the limestone wouldn't be a very good quality, but Hetton was the first one to sink through it with great difficulty. But once they got through it, they found the coal to be in perfect good quality, and it had a good sale on the export market. The sinking started in December 1820, and coal was reached in September 1822, and the second shaft was sunk on the 23rd December 1820, and the first coals were drawn on the 26th of January. So we have a colliery managing to get through the limestone, the quicksands, what have you, on the east of Durham, and this was the first colliery to do so. Okay. Now the company needed to transport the coal to the coast, so they could export down to London. Because of disagreements with other colliery owners, the Lamptons and the Londonderrys, they found that they had to build their own railway 8 miles from Hetton to Sunderland. They employed George Steenson to design the railway, which had to go over the top of Warden Law, which is 634 feet above sea level, but very high, the highest hill in the area. For all George designed it, his brother Robert project managed it, because George had already been pinched by the Stockton and Darlton Railway to go and design their railway. But this was George's first design for a complete railway on a greenfield site. I'll just show. Oh, sorry. Yeah. So from Hetton, it was travelled on the flat, and then 2 inclines: Copt Hill, Warden Law to the highest point, 4 self-acting inclines down to North Moor at Sunderland, and then locomotive worked down to the stairs at the Weir. You can see the old Weir Bridge there. Okay. George supplied engines for the railway, and this was a typical Stevenson locomotive, like Killingworth style locomotive. Once the coal was taken, got to the stairs, they had to preserve it, because obviously the ships couldn't move move up and down the river all the time because of winter and what have you. So they had to store the coal so it didn't degrade, and this was the Holden house, the Holden building, until they could get it onto the ships to be exported. I'll let you read that. Basically, this was in the Durham Chronicle. Okay. Now, you don't believe everything the newspapers say. Even then, they got themselves wrong, because George actually only supplied 3 locomotives in 1822. He didn't get the other 2 till 1823. Following the success of the Hetton Colliery, the coal company decided to sink 2 new pits, and the new pits were Elemore and Eppleton. Elemore Colliery sinking started in March 1825, and coal was reached without much difficulty in 1827. The colliery was linked to the Hetton Railway by a self-acting incline of about a mile. Hetton Colliery again, they sunk that on, started sinking on the 23rd of May 1825. But of course, the problems with the limestone and the sands underneath the limestone, coal wasn't reached until 1833. Again, it was linked to the Hetton Railway by a self-Hetton incline, and it was locomotive worked after 1895 when the ropes were removed. Just to give it, as I showed earlier, just to give an indication of the inclines, fairly flat, and then up to the Bayer engine. Sorry, I'll start that again. Within a few months of the railway being opened, they realised that George hadn't designed it for the amount of coal that needed to go down the line. So there was a lot of additional work had to be done, and of course he specified fish-bellied rail, which the locomotives were too heavy and it cracked it. Eventually the Hetton Coal Company started their own foundry to produce fish-bellied rail, and also the speed of the amount of coal that needed to go down the line. So they advertised for some new stationary engines, because the locomotive will pull at 4 miles an hour, whereby a winding engine can do about 10 miles an hour. So you had much more speed in getting the coal down to the Staiths. So they introduced 4 new engines. There was the flat engine between Copt Hill and Wardenlaw. There was the 4th incline engine, and then there was one at Winters Lane, and then one at the Staiths. So obviously now you have much speed, you transport the coals, especially after the opening of Elemore Colliery. Okay. So that's the flat engine in between the two, and then the 4th incline engine. Fourth incline engine, Winters Lane engine, and a one at the Staiths to drop the coal down onto the river. Okay. So now we have the 3 collieries in operation by 1833. Lions Main, which is Hetton Lions Colliery, Elemore and Hetton Collieries. There is argument that the steam elephant didn't run at Hetton, but I don't think they would put it on that 10-tail book, which is in the Mine Institute here, if it wasn't their locomotive. So it virtually proves that the steam elephant, which is at Beamish, the replica at Beamish, actually ran at Hetton. Okay. Now, with the influx of miners, they needed somewhere to live. So Hetton and Hetton Lions were the main villages of the Hetton Lions Colliery. Hetton Downs, up the Downs was the village settled around Hetton Colliery, and Easton Lane, of course, was settled around Elemore Colliery. Okay. So we'll have a tour from Elemore, which is the southernmost colliery, down to Sunderland. Elemore was sunk on land belonging to the Baker family, who owned Elemore Hall, and he became a shareholder in the business for a very short period, but he became a shareholder. As I said earlier, it was rope hauled until 1905, and then locomotive worked. On the Elemore Colliery branch was the main road, the railway crossed the main road from Horton to Easington, and it was one of the few gated crossings. And for all that the railway closed in 1959, that bus stop is still known as the White Gates. As you can see, the Hetton Lions complex became huge. They had coke ovens, they had brickworks, they had gasworks, and they had big engineering workshops as well. And for delivery of coal, they had a horse and carts in a granary there. This is the crossing we've just seen at the White Gates. So it was a huge, this was 1919, it's quite a huge complex. It was virtually self-sufficient. The engineering works that could produce, you'll just see, they produced locomotives and did all the engineering work required. Okay. This was believed to be one of the original erecting workshops. We think that the Stevenson locomotives were erected, came in kit form, and were put together when they got to Hetton. And this was the before the new ones were built. This was the original erecting workshop for the locomotive repair and what have you. Okay. That was the workshop we've just seen. The building was modernised and taken over, and it became Hetton Boys Club, and it was opened by the Queen Mother in 1963. So the building still got used. What we saw of the engineering work, the fitting shop, became the cricket and gymnasium. Now this is the Hetton loco. The myth was that it was one of Stephenson's engines built in 1822. It's recently been, it's the one, as I say, in the collection, in the National Rail Museum collection. It's been investigated, and it's proved that it was actually built in 1849-50. It's still of the Stephenson type, but they couldn't have formed the boilers. They didn't have the technology in 1822 to form the size of the boiler plates. So it was actually built by the plates were done by the Bishop Weymouth Iron Company at Sunderland, and it was built in Hetton, at the Hetton workshops. So it's preserved, so it's in the collection, but it was only built in 1849-50. And the beauty of it was, it led the 100th anniversary of the Stockton and Darlton Railway under its own steam in the cavalcade. The locomotion had a Hillman car engine in it, but that was its own steam, and it led the parade. Okay. They built other engines. There were bits of tacked together things. This had a marine engine in it, and a chain drive, a little bit health and safety, but as I say, they did produce other locomotives there. That's the old engine shed with the children wagons on it. Okay. Some of the workmen on some of the engine drivers, firemen, fitters in about 1900. You had your cleaners, you had your firemen, you had your lighter-uppers, you had your drivers themselves. Okay. Of course, the railway need to be maintained, and the wagons and what have you. And these are the wagon shop workmen. They would repair the wagons and even build new ones. This was the wagon repair shops. Okay. As I said earlier, the Hetton Colliery had large coke and brick producing facilities. That's the coke works, which was quite a huge. They were there from about the turn of the century till the 1920s. Okay. This is the original Hetton Colliery. When it closed, it wasn't much different to that really. There was a few additions, but basically that was the original colliery of 1822, the Blossom and the Minor Shaft. Joycey took over the Hetton Coal Company in 1911. He'd already bought the Lambton collieries in 1896. He'd taken them over. And in 1911, he took over the Hetton Coal Company. He made them an offer they couldn't refuse. So he amalgamated the two and became the Lambton and Hetton collieries. They spent an awful lot of money refurbishing the whole of the Hetton Railway, and they built a new engineering workshop. That's a view inside. You can see they had the capability of making quite complex pieces of engineering. Okay. They also built a brand new engine shed, and this was based at the Lions Colliery, so the locomotives that worked the Epplton Colliery, Elemore Colliery, and the Hetton Lions Colliery and the main line were all housed in this engine shed. There's a kid going down there in the 50s saying, "Can I have a ride, mister?" Jump on, pull that lever, and that's what got me interested in industrial railways. Okay. This is ready for a day's work, ready for a busy day. Number 41, and that's number 13, I think. So we'll leave the Hetton lines and we'll head towards Hetton and eventually Sunderland. The railway literally, we've we've come from Hetton Lines here and we're going into the middle of Hetton. This is Richard Street crossing, which was flagged. There's no crossing gates. Okay, Stuart. It literally cut Hetton in half. No fences, everybody played on the railway. You rolled out of the pub, rolled across the line, went to the next pub. There was a chapel, shops, and what have you. All open, no barriers. It wouldn't happen today. Okay. This is Jack Evans. He was the crossing keeper. This is Caroline crossing Jack Evans, the Caroline we've just seen earlier on. The Alps in the background is Hetton Colliery waste heap. Okay. There's Jack operating his flag, stopping the traffic. Jack had a wooden leg, and you can see I think he damaged it at work, and he became the crossing keeper man. He was there for a lot of years. This is, if you know the Hetton, if you know Hetton, this is the main front street in Hetton, and this is up to Eppleton and Hyde in the Downs. Okay. Looking past Caroline Street down towards Hetton Dean, this was the original stairs for dropping the coal off for the miners, which obviously got free coal. They removed that and they built a brand new one. You can just see a locomotive on the top. That's just brought the wagon up for the coal stairs for coal delivery. This trench was a gas pipe. The Hetton Gasworks and the Horton Gas Company amalgamated, so they laid a pipe from Horton Spring all the way up to Hetton Lyons. The obvious choice was to take it up the railway because it was flat. You didn't have to dig roads up and what have you. So that was a gas pipe from Horton Spring to Hetton. Okay. A little bit further down towards Sunderland, this is the branch up to Hetton Colliery. Again, you can see the Hetton Colliery waste heap in the background. I would like to think that would I be right in saying that would probably have been hand dug? They wouldn't have had machinery like that when they were taking that out. I mean, because that was a very old pit heap, that. Okay. The wagons came down from Hetton and were assembled here, dropped off here. They were broken up into 5 or 6 wagons in this, and then they were drawn up Cobtail, up here. In the early days, in children wagons, the wagon riders, they would sit on their wagons while they were drawn up, and then they would jump off and stand on the brakes and stop the wagons when they got to the top. Father and son, Atkinsons, Malcolm's great relatives. From Hortley Spring to Seaham Road, there was a crossing on the Cobtail incline, and this was the Cobtail Public House just here. So we're looking back down to Hetton Dean. Okay. At Cobtail, obviously the Cobtail Inn, that served as the drinking place for people who worked on the railway. It's in the process of being refurbished and reopened. It's been there for a lot of years. Okay. Once you got up to the top, this is the bankhead at Cobtail. These wagons are ready to descend, and these have just been brought up over the kip, and then they're dropped off. The ropes are changed to the empty wagons, and they would go down as the new ones were brought up. Notice how the cottages, all of the bankheads and what have you, there was cottage for the workmen. That was the Gare family lived in these 2 houses. This was the winding engine at Cobtail, which was called the Byre engine. After 1827, they put another engine midway between Wardenlaw and Cobtail. But this engine drew the wagons up from Hetton Dean and at the same time sent the empty ones back down. Okay. This was the view in the winding drums. It was replaced, the original winder was replaced in 1876. It was built by the Grange Ironworks at Durham, a very important engineering company. I don't know if you know the Durham area, but the caravan site on the A1M, just as you go into Carville, that was the Grange Ironworks. And the Grange Ironworks made headgear for collieries for all over the world, and equipment like this. So that replaced the 1822 engine. It also got rid of the flat engine which had been installed in 1827. Okay. Looking back, Cobtail Byre engine, this is the flat engine as it was. So the wagons were drawn along to here and then to the Wardenlaw Bankfoot and then taken up to Wardenlaw. In 1876, when it was replaced, they kept the engine and they used it to draw water to supply the Cobtail engine and the Wardenlaw engine with water. Okay. Looking up to the top of Wardenlaw, as I said, 634 feet above sea level. The loaded wagons come up here, go over the top and stopped, and then the loaded wagons, the empty wagons would drop down to Cobtail. Okay. Just a view back, as we've seen, looking from Wardenlaw, this was the passing loop for the wagons, the flat engine in the middle there, and then the Cobtail in the distance. The pit heap over there, that was the Meadows Colliery, part of Hetton Colliery system. Okay. Once we got to the top, the load wagons came up to the top, and then they went down the 4 self-acting inclines. A very complex bit of movement here, because the inclines, the wagons were self-acting inclines, so the loaded wagons went down the 4 inclines, and then they brought the empty ones up with the weight of the ones going down. An interesting thing about Wardenlaw, Ernie Johnson was the unofficial hairdresser for the line, and he was a fireman at Wardenlaw. And if you wanted your hair cut, you jumped onto the wagon from down the inclines or the cottages, and you went up and got your hair cut. And then you went back down on the wagons going back down. And they did that with the bands as well. So 2- and 3-year-old bands, they used to strap them onto the front of the wagon and write on the wagon saying haircut. And when they came up, they took them off, cut the hair, and then put them back on the wagons and sent them back down the line. And that's true, that's very true. The Wardenlaw engine was installed in 1836, and that was built by Murray's of Chesley Street. So it was there for 120 odd years till 1959, worked perfectly. Okay, that's right. That was Alf Swinhoe. He was the winder man at the controls. Now, as well as the winder men, you had your plate layers, you had your wagon men who changed the ropes and what have you. And of course, with the Hetton Railway being very, very busy, it had to be maintained at all times, even in the worst winters, to keep it. So the plate layers did an awful lot of work. In some cases, it was so bad, like 47 and that, they got miners from the collieries to come and help get rid of the snow so that it'd keep transporting the coal down to the Staiths. Okay. Just on the first incline, Burden Road from Stony Gate along to Burden Village, that was the crossing on the Burden Road. Again, flagged, man with a flag. Once you got to the top of the incline, the wagons changed again. The loaded wagons would draw the empty wagons back up, and this happened on the 4 inclines. Yeah. Once they got down to the bottom of the 4th incline at North Mower, the locomotives took over, the wagons were reassembled and then taken down to the Staiths. It was 2 3/4 miles. It was nicknamed the long run by the men to the Staiths. Okay. In 1920, Joycey bought Silksworth Colliery off Londonderry, and in 1939 they put a branch from Silksworth Colliery down onto the Hetton line. so that some of Silksworth Colliery coals could be transported and exported from the Lambton and Hetton Staiths. This is the where is it? This is Silksworth Colliery, and this is the branch down to Hetton. Okay. Originally, if you know the Barnes area, the railway crossed on the level. Just before, as you leave the Barnes and turn to go into Sunderland, there's a petrol station on the right-hand side, and that was where the level crossing was. As the road got more busy, it was obviously a little bit of a jam on the main Durham-Sunderland road. Okay. So about 1919, after Joyce had taken over, they dug a tunnel under the Durham road. This is the Barnes Hotel on the left-hand side, and the crossing that was further down towards Sunderland. So they built a tunnel underneath, so all the coal was drawn, and that would ease the situation on Durham Road. Along the Chester Road, accidents do happen. What had happened, the loaded train from Chester Road, from the Barnes, was coming along, and somebody had inadvertently left the points the wrong way. So this was the siding, and the locomotive and the load kept going. Thankfully, they stopped, or they would have had plenty of coal on Chester Road, free. John Thompson and Sons' main land sale depot was there, and for years and years, that Hetton coal depot, long after the railway had gone, you could still see that sign on that building, on that office building. The locomotive had just nearly derailed here, and this is looking up Chester Road. This is a later shot showing the diesel, which was used. Silksworth Colliery coal was taken down after the Hetton line was closed. Okay. This is the original depot we saw. It became Johnson's depot. This is when it was the Hetton Coal Company. You can't see, but that's his Hetton Coal Company on there. This was the land sale drops. There was quite a few in the Sunderland area supplying coal to the Sunderland households. Okay. The Hetton Coal Company supplied various industries in Sunderland. They did Hartley's Glassworks, and they also did the Bishop Weymouth Ironworks, which, as I said earlier, had formed the boilers for the Hetton engine in 1849-50. This is the Hetton Railway going up there, and this is the Lambton Railway coming from Penshire and Raintons down, and they crossed on the level. So that, as I said, the Hetton Railway actually supplied coal for Hartley's Glassworks, which eventually became Cornens and Pyrex. Okay. It also supplied coal to Sunderland Power Station, or just off Hilton Road, and this is their locomotive. It's going along to collect coal from the Hetton Railway. And this is along to the power station. The other tracks is actually the tram tracks of the Sunderland Corporation. Their depot was just here. The railway was actually eventually went underneath Hilton Road and went down to the Staiths. This is a locomotive bringing empties back from the lower This is bringing empties from the lower Staiths, and this is the high level Staiths, which we saw originally. One of the first slides showed the old coal storage area. So this was the high level Staiths, and that's Monkway and Mouth Colliery in the background across the other side of the river. Okay. To get down to the lower level Staiths, we've come down here. There was a zigzag to get the levels. You went down, down again, and then back down, and then onto the lower level Staiths. Okay. This was the high level Staiths, which replaced the original Staiths we saw earlier. When they were built, they were the fastest loading Staiths onto ships in the northeast. They could fill a full ship within a few hours. Okay. This is a view from the high level Staiths, looking up the river. Ayres Quay Glassworks, Bottle Works, ships waiting to come down to collect coal. The funny thing was, the Ayres Quay, they produced beer bottles, and of course they were supplied with coal from the Hetton Railway, and Lamb's Brewery in Hetton actually used Ayres Quay bottles, so it went sort of full circle. The coal went down, but they came back as bottles up the Hetton. Okay. Some of the workmen on the stage, you had your trimmers, your teamers, and what have you. A canny bunch of blokes. I wouldn't like the job. Okay. Joyce took over, as I said, in 1911, and what he did, this here is part of the zigzag down the stairs. To get the zigzag level down to the next level, they went into a little tunnel and then back down again. In 1911, Joyce took over the Hetton Coal Company, and they made, in 1919, they drove a tunnel from the Hetton Stairs through the hillside to the Lambton Stairs, and most of the coal was now shipped from the Lambton Stairs. This is the other side. This is the Lambton tunnel from the Penshire and the Raintons, and this was the new tunnel that they drove between the two. The view of the stairs, it's quite, when you say an aerial view, it's quite surprising how much industry there was in Sunderland. There's the Sunderland Bridge. This is all Galleysgale. There's the power station we saw earlier. This is the Hetton Stairs, and then that's the Lambton Stairs. The whole area was industrial export and coal. Galleysgale, that's Galleysgale Bridge, which is still there. But just shows how big the whole system was. When they drove the tunnel through between the two stairs, they built a new engine shed, and this engine shed on the Lambton side served the locomotives running up to Northmoor and also the locomotives running back to Penshore. So there's your two tunnels as we saw earlier. Okay. Once the wagons were brought onto the staith themselves, they got up and the coal was dropped through the bottom of the wagons in the northeast, and the guy, it must have been freezing because this is winter, he's got his gloves on, what have you, he's getting up to try and loosen the coal, and this guy's got a mill hammer because the coal would stick in the wagons and you had to loosen it, so you braid it with a great big mill hammer. Okay. This is the view we've just seen, and the coal would drop down the chutes and then onto the ships. Once it got onto the ship, the trimmers, they had to level the coal out so that the ship balanced correctly. That must have been a really terrible job because the wind blowing down the weir in the winter and also shifting coal in the dust and what have you. So they're leveling the coal out on the ship itself. Okay. Now the Hetton Coal Company encouraged sport and what have you, and they supplied 2 rowing boats to the trimmers and the teamers, and they had their own boat teams. So you've got the Lindsay Wood and Wood. So they were the 2 rowing boats, and they had regattas in the early 1900s, like Newcastle Regatta, Durham Regatta. They had one on the weir in the 1900s. Okay. And this was the trimmers' oars. The gang of 6 with the oars. As we saw earlier, it was a huge, huge complex. It's just hard to believe. That's where it was up till 1967. Okay. And that's where it is now. They spend a lot of money refurbishing the whole of the Staiths area and the Hetton Railway right back to Elemore. They're in the process of doing it, and they're reopening the Stevenson Trail from the Staiths all the way up to Elemore Colliery. So this is where it is virtually today. Okay. Now in 1959, the Coal Board in their wisdom sunk a new colliery at Hawthorne, a new shaft at Hawthorne, and coal from Elemore Collieries, Merton Collieries and Eppleton Collieries was transported underground by railway underground to this new combine, and there was a coke works, and so the Hetton Railway became redundant. Hetton lines had closed in 1950, but obviously the railway had stayed open for Eppleton and Elemore coals. So that was no need for the Hetton Railway anymore. So the stretch from Hetton Railway, from Hetton all the way down to North Moor, virtually to the Silksworth branch, was removed, and the Silksworth branch continued, which you'll see later. Okay. They immediately started taking the track up. This is at North Moor, heading up back towards Hetton. You can see they've taken the rope, they've just pulled the rope out there, and they're busy taking the track up. Okay. This is at Wardenlaw itself, removing the ropes. The rollers was so that the rope could be guided around bends. It didn't obstruct the other track of the wagons going down. So that's what the rollers were for. So this is taking the track with Wardenlaw itself. As you can see, Wardenlaw, and then taking the track, which was sad, really. Now, the Wardenlaw engine, which had been installed in 1836, was dismantled by the Army for Frank Atkinson's proposed Museum of the North, which eventually became Beamish Museum. It had been built in 1836 by Murray's of Chesley Street, which is where Horner's Toffee used to be and where Morrison's car park is now. That was Murray's engine works. So it was dismantled and taken initially to Akeley Heads at Durham, and then eventually ended up at Beamish, where it's lain for 50 years, or in the open, in a dismantled state. It'll never, I don't think it'll ever be rebuilt. But it's still quite sound for all it was, all that 123 years, you know, service. Okay. So as I say, they start taking the track up from North Moor. This is the middle of Hetton, where we saw the shot of 13 going through Caroline Crossing, heading back towards Hetton. All of the Hetton complex was taken up, and this is the last few feet of track on the little branch connection onto the Durham and Sunderland Railway, which was BR. And the last few feet of track taken up, put onto the wagons. Okay. And number 14 was the last locomotive on the southern part of the Hetton Railway. 14's preserved at Tanfield. The engine driver, the Hetton engine driver, is handed over the locomotive to the British Railways people. It was dropped onto the Durham and Sunderland, went underneath the Hetton Railway, along to Hetton Station, along to Moseley, and then down through Rainton Bridge, down to Philadelphia. As I said earlier, the northern section from Silksworth down to Sunderland, they kept the land sale depot at Hilton Road. So coal from Silksworth Colliery was taken down to the land sale depot, and the railway stayed open until 1972, the northern part, 150 years of existence. Okay, that's it. Thank you.
Lovely. Well, I'm sure you enjoyed that just as much as I did. I wonder if there's any questions you'd like to give to John. If you'd quote who you are and where you're from.
You, Kevin Boyle, retired Network Rail. I noticed that there are 4 consecutive inclined railways. Was that a function of the maximum length that one stationary engine could cope with, or was it the gradient or the angle, or
It
what?
was just basically where they could put them. The Coptail engine, I've got some distances actually. The Coptail, from Hetton to the Coptail Bankfoot was just under 1.5 miles. Up to Coptail from Deanbank was 832 yards. Coptail to the flat, 775 yards. The flat to Wardenlaw Bankfoot, 775 yards. And then Wardenlaw, the inclines were different lengths. It just depends where they could work them to. The first one was 1,300 yards. Next one was 1,200 yards, and then incline 3 was 700 and odd yards, and then incline 4 was 900 yards. It's just as they worked it out.
So they couldn't cope with 2,500 yards or anything like that?
Well, it was hemp ropes originally, if you think about it, and it
right,
wouldn't, you know, it wouldn't last. They didn't last very long anyway. The hemp ropes.
No.
It was just as the layout, as the contours as well, the gradients between the inclines, and that's a fairly flat area. We'll stop there, then we'll go down to the next one. Go to the next one. It was just how the inclines worked through.
John Phil Brown from South Shields. I'm from a mining family, but from a nursing background. I was interested when you mentioned white gates. We still have people in South Shields that ask for Westover bridges, even though the colliery's gone and the bridges have gone.
Yes, of course, yeah.
Given the expertise and the haulage and the use of the incline, as you say, accidents would happen, but I'm sure, like no other area, there must have been so much muscle memory, even if it was the men, the father and son in the back of the wagons riding the brake with their feet. I'm not all up to speed with the railway, but were there any serious incidents on the incline, or were there few?
Yes. Major one was John Brandfoot and Hewitson. They were ministers. They used to do the circuit. They walked from Sunderland up to Hetton to do the ministerial work in the chapels, and that was the quickest way up to Wardenlaw, then down to Hetton, rather than go the detour around. And as they were walking up, they saw the wagons coming up, and they stepped over to the other track without thinking that it was a main and tail system. So the wagons coming up ran them over. One was killed instantly, and Brandfoot was taken to Sunderland Hospital, and he died. There was incidents of bands playing on the railways, getting knocked down, losing fingers and legs. But basically, for an open railway, there wasn't a lot. When you think about it logically, you'd expect a lot, but there wasn't. People were aware of it. He's going to mock.
Hetton Colliery, the sinking of Hetton Colliery. I think there was somebody from here that was involved with it, because his name, one of the names, I think his son was on one of those rowing boats, wasn't it? Wood.
Oh, Addison Mountain.
Yeah.
Oh, on the rowing boats.
Yeah, it was Lindsay Wood.
Yes.
Yes. Well, I think his father was Nicholas Wood.
Yes.
Right, and I think Nicholas Wood had an involvement in the sinking of the Hetton Colliery.
No.
But he's in the transactions. He's got the drawings at the bottom of the shaft where they have the furnace.
Yeah, he advised, I would have think, but he wasn't involved. I wouldn't have said he was involved.
I thought he drew parts of it out.
Yeah, but he really didn't become involved totally in the 1830s, and then he became managing director in the 1844, I think it was. He would have certainly advised, but I don't think he wasn't a shareholder or anything like that. Quite a few engineers gave information and help with the sinking of it. I mean, obviously William Colson he wasn't the master sinker, but his tubbing solved the problems of getting through the quicksands. But I don't think Nicholas Wood, he lived advised, but I wouldn't have said he was a partner or anything like that. Not done much later.
I just know in the transactions, the drawings are there.
Oh, yes,
Of Hetton Colliery.
Well, about the 1830s, he did a whole... he looked at the whole colliery and gave all his information as how, changing things and what have you. But that was 1830s. I'm not sure. I know what you're saying about the transactions, but I would have said he probably just advised rather than... looking at that. I'll look at that, Stuart. I'll look at that.
Dave Granger, Sunderland. I'm interested in the free incline, whether the wagons were going downhill.
Mhm.
We saw a picture of a couple of guys, family, on the as brakemen. Was that, how long did that last for, or was that a general thing? I mean, a full load of 5 or 6 wagons going downhill, fully loaded. Was it taking a hell of a lot to stop them?
Well, they went over the kip. So
there was
basically,
I
it
saw
slowed them
something on
down, and they would jump off and what have you.
Right.
But certainly, children wagons are used on the Hetton Railway of 1830s virtually, 1930s virtually. I mean, as you know, Londonderry, it's same dock, they had them in the 70s. So basically, I would have said those man riders well in the early 1900s. Sorry? What? Yes, Oh, yes. Yeah, that was the more modern wagons as well. They would be on the front, wouldn't they? Yeah.
That's Kevin Boyle again. You mentioned right at the beginning of the talk about the geologists having a theory that the coal immediately beneath the magnesian limestone would be of low quality.
Yes.
Was that just locally to Hetton, or was that right across the coalfield?
No, it was the whole of the east of Durham, Northumberland,
Yeah.
right way down to virtually Easton, and even further down than that, Blackhall.
Yeah.
They felt that it would have been compressed and it wouldn't be that good quality coal.
Yeah.
But it was proved that the limestone was laid much later than the coal measures.
Yeah.
But they honestly thought that it wouldn't. I mean, just 4 mile away, you had the Hetton Collieries, which was to the west of the limestone plateau, and they got through it all right. They didn't have any problems whatsoever. But they honestly thought that the coal would be inferior. But when they got through it in Hetton, I mean, they found 6-foot seams of perfectly good main coal and Hutton coal.
Did they ever apologise?
No, they just ruled the fact they hadn't put money into the business.
Any other questions?
Hiya, Nabia. I'm a postgraduate student at Newcastle Uni. I just had a quick question. Most of you probably know the answer to that, but what is Coke Works? I know you mentioned it in the
Sorry?
slide. What's Coke Works?
Coke Works is where the... Stuart?
Well, coal is where you use coal to produce coal, which you use coal to manufacture steel. You also put it on fires as well. It's quite on fires.
Yeah. It was produced in beehive ovens where the coal was heated, but it wasn't. But kept its volatility really. Yeah. Yeah.
Did they get that from where they got the coal?
Yes. It was the coal.
It was the coal.
They just
okay.
reinvented it.
Right. Don't think we have anyone else any questions to ask. So we'll go on and say I enjoyed that immensely, and I'm sure you all did. So the microphone is now coming down to Mr. Stuart Fordhouse. Is going to give us a vote of thanks.
Thank you, Mr. President. Ladies and gentlemen, members and guests and visitors, it gives me great delight tonight to give the vote of thanks on behalf of the Institute of John. John's knowledge of the history of coal mining in the northeast is it's well known throughout. And I've recently got involved with John. I came on as a late starter on the Hetton Colliery Railway 200. And the enthusiasm of John and the other members on HCR 200 is absolutely exceptional. They've really dug in. They've really created a tremendous exhibition that's going to go ahead on, as you say, on the 18th of November. There's a conference going on there, and there's talks by, I'm forgetting how many people, John.
7, 8.
Is it 8, 4 on the Saturday and 4 on the Sunday? And it's a free event where anybody can come along and take part. And then obviously on the Saturday night we have the banquet at Hardwick Hall, isn't it?
Holgarth Manor.
Holgarth Manor, right, Holgarth
You've been in the
Manor.
wrong place again.
And, you know, I've booked a hotel room. I think it's in the wrong one as well. But also, John, apart from all this, you know, I mean, John's been very busy. I mean, he's a very keen caravanner, and he travels all over the northeast. In fact, I was giving a talk at Seaham, and he couldn't come there because he was away in his caravan.
No. Yeah.
And the other thing is he likes rail ale and malt whiskey.
Which I can't drink
Which
anymore.
he's been told he's got to reduce it down, you know. But, £50. Oh, the treasure's over there. And I'll be quite honest, we meet every month, and there's a tremendous amount of work going on. And what they've actually done, they've highlighted the importance of the Hetton Colliery Railway, what it's actually did over the number of years that it was in existence. And also, it's like the mother of all railways, because every other railway sprung from that when they saw what they could do with steam engines on static and mobile steam engines. And from that, I mean, obviously, the Stockton Railway, I think they were the first, but they weren't really. They weren't really. But I think they've getting, how much are they getting off the government to celebrate it?
20 million.
Just 20 million.
We've got 2 and 6pence.
We've got half a crowd, I was going to say, John. So, on behalf of the Mining Institute, John, and behalf of everybody else that's come here tonight, can we put our hands together to show our appreciation for the tour? Thank you.
Can I just mention one thing?